we're going to be looking at the archaeology and history of Cymru, looking at dikes. Yes, you've heard it, D-Y-K-E-S, dikes. Now, this is a subject, when we look at subjects, like we look at coins and we say, you know, the Hjulvar coin, have I seen the Hjulvar coin in person? No, I haven't. However, all of the locations that we're visiting today, I have visited. I know them, I understand them, and I've taken groups there. Actually, I've taken groups there quite some years ago. One dike I want to introduce is Watts Dyke. Yes, W-A-T-T-S, Watts, Watts Dyke. Watts Dyke is in northeast Cymru, and no doubt we'll be looking at Offa's Dyke as well. But we'll be looking at a dike that might be familiar to Bill, Senhennydd Dyke. And when I was putting the slides together for all this, it's very rare that I get angry. And you will understand why I got angry when we do actually look at the slides for Senhennydd. Senhennydd, I should call it. Or you can call it Senhennydd if you're common. So when we look at Watts Dyke, the interesting thing about lots of these dikes is that they're used as boundaries and they enshrine the modern landscape. That we're within the modern landscape. So they haven't been lost. Most of them haven't been built on and they're greatly respected. But we've got one case involving Watts Dyke where some damage was caused. When I say, we got some information about Offa's Dyke where some damage was caused to Offa's Dyke in 2014, but that's another thing altogether. We got a bit of squeaking in my ears, but it's okay for now. So we will look at Offa's Dyke, and I know some of you will have been to Offa's Dyke as well. So I've been to Watts Dyke, I've been to Offa's Dyke. Offa's Dyke starts from Chepstow and it runs all the way through to the sea in the north. It takes goes into England, it goes into Wales, it goes into England, goes into Wales. It's all over the place. And when we think about the likes of, you know what I'm going to do? This feedback is really strong. So what I'm going to do, oh, I've muted Pam and it's gone. So let's crack on. Pam, we've muted your mic because we're getting lots of feedback on, so don't worry about it. So this Offa's Dyke, when you look at Offa's Dyke, the ditch itself is actually on the Welsh side and the bank is on the English side, and you see the same with Watts Dyke as well. If we, oh sorry, move on. But the first one we're going to actually look at is Senhennydd, which is near Caerphilly, and Senhennydd is a nice little interesting village, and it's north of Caerphilly, north of Cardiff. It's in one of the valleys, in one of the industrial valleys. But the good thing about Senhennydd Dyke is that large sections of Senhennydd Dyke have survived the mining industry, which is great, because one thing that we do know about passionately across Wales is our mining, but we also know as well that mining activity all the way across the board has destroyed lots of our heritage, but the Senhennydd Dyke is still there. It's more or less intact, actually, and in lots of ways, so is Offa's Dyke and so is Watts Dyke. These monuments are interesting because most of them are still surviving. You know, you don't get monuments that are tens of kilometers in length still surviving. I actually got angry when I was reading about this today. So you've got Abertradur there, you've got Senhennydd north of it, and I got angry because I read the lines that when the Normans conquered this part of northern Glamorgan, Senhennydd, when they conquered it, they turfed off all the native people off the land. They got rid of them. They dispersed them because what they wanted to do was to create a deer park. So all the native people from the Senhennydd landscape were surplus to requirement and they were just tossed off the landscape. I got very, very angry, but I thought I need to calm down. And so what I looked at is a little bit of information about it, and this is actually on the Royal Commission on Nature and Historic Monument site. And it says the Llanhenedd Dyke is a bank and a ditch that runs for roughly 12 kilometres, enclosing the Aber Valley in the Glamorgan uplands, including the modern village of Llanhenedd and Abertradur. Now, it encloses a whole valley, so you can imagine that people are quite happily living there before the 1200s, and then suddenly the Normans go up there and they kick everybody off the land. It's, in other words, it's very similar to the land clearances in Scotland in the 1800s. It could be akin to clearing valleys in Wales in the 1920s to create great big reservoirs. But this is a clearance. We don't know where these people went. They were just tossed off the land. They were replaced by deer. It consists of a bank with an internal ditch. Now, the internal ditch itself is to stop the deer actually getting out. So the ditch itself is going to dissuade the deer from getting out. That's basically what it is. It's a deer ditch. And naturally it would have been fenced off as well with, obviously you wouldn't have needed a very high fence on the top either, just a rickety fence, and the ditch on the inside would have stopped the deer escaping. So it encloses an area of 2,500 acres. So this was a deer park. This was all land that was stolen from our ancestors to create a Norman deer park. It's quite, got very disgusted with this, as you can probably see that I'm muting my words here. There are additional stretches of dike attached to the northwest side of the main circuit. These appear to be contemporary or extensions. So they actually added bits to it as well. So they got rid of more people, and they said, we're going to extend the deer park this way, and we're going to extend it that way, and all over the place. This is rather interesting because what we do find is dikes, deer park dikes. We find them all over the place. Now, I can't speak for Cornwall at all, and maybe I should ask Peter if he's ever come across deer parks in Cornwall. Have you, Peter?
I'm trying to think now. Not off the top of my head.
So it's not a familiar thing for you then. It's not what that okay.
On some estates it may well have been, but they would be limited to the estate.
Exactly, but this is actually a living landscape that people have been surfed off it. Have you actually rambled along here, Bill?
I've been up there, Carl, and I've been aware of the ditch. I've been to the church, the remote church of Eglwysilion on the top of the mountain overlooking.
Yeah.
But I wasn't specifically looking for the dike, no. But I've been in the area, so I know the terrain.
You can actually see the dike from Eglwysilion. That's Michelle. Michelle's a great fan of Eglwysilion, and when I went to Eglwysilion years ago, the reason why we went to Eglwysilion was to actually see the dike from the church at Eglwysilion. So that's a good lead into it. And it's so great to have been to these places to describe what they're like rather than just reading about them. So the dike survives as an earthwork feature through most of its course, and it's relatively intact, and it follows modern day field boundaries. And the bank itself can be up to nearly 7 meters wide, and surviving under 1.5 meters in height today. They describe a flat bottom ditch. The reason why it's got flat bottom ditch is because it's hitting rock. So you're not going to cut through the rock. It's got a flat bottom ditch. That's really important. And the ditch itself it's describing about 1.5 meters deep, by about a length of nearly 6 meters wide. So this is quite a formidable earthwork of 12 meters in width, all told. And very interesting here, it says there are no obvious surviving entrances, only breaks across marshy ground. Well, obviously you would have gained access into the Llanhenedd estate. And maybe those little entranceways that led off to these other little bits of dike. And actually, interesting enough, the word for those other little bits of dike, not just here, but at other locations, you get the word cross dike, and they're, you familiarly see these on lots of maps, and nobody knows what lots of these cross dikes are. At the end, I describe another cross dike. and they're used for different purposes throughout time. And the word cross dyke is not just associated with these deer parks created by the Normans. Of course, Offa's Dyke wasn't created by the Normans. It was created much earlier. And Watts Dyke was actually created much earlier. And the word cross dyke is associated with little boundaries between little parishes or something like that. Anyway, the creation of such a vast deer park, presumably involving the depopulation of the entire valley. Read that again. The depopulation of the entire valley. And you can imagine what the local people felt like in 1267 to be told that your family have lived here from generation after generation, and now you're leaving. Where are you going to go? And this is the tragedy of this type of action. In the Vale of Glamorgan, we do see the word deer park used quite a lot. For example, in regards to Llantrithid Place in the Vale of Glamorgan, they had a great deer park, and there's other deer parks within the landscape as well. Farnmon's another example. So 1267, and can be linked to the construction of the vast castle of Caerphilly, 3 kilometers to the southeast. So you can imagine that this is a great deer park created for the lords of Caerphilly Castle, i.e. the De Clare family. And it says here, a little bit of a description, it seems likely that the route from the castle's western entrance followed the Nant i'r Aber, and the main entrance to the park was by the stream at the base of what was a steep wooded valley. The park would have been the setting for highly formalized aristocratic hunts. There was probably at least one lodge housing the parker and providing passing accommodation for the lordly hunters. A possible location is Abertradur, where there was a wood named Coed Tir Park, Tenor Park. So all that said, from Royal Commission on Ancient Historical Monuments, and it's quite scathing, really, isn't it? It's almost as if saying, you know, this is just for the Normans. This is a Norman landscape. And I was quite chuffed with myself this evening. I just thought, right, let's try and find the dike from the aerial photography. So we're going down on it. That's south of Abertradur, and then you can see the dike. And then I actually looked at the plan and I nailed it. The aerial photography shows the dike today, the 12-meter wide dike. It shows it today, and there it is. You can see that. It may look faint to you guys, but it's quite clear to me. So if we annotate that, we can basically follow that line along there. It goes all the way through, and that is the boundary of the deer park. And there you go. There's the road to Eglwysilion there, which Bill was just talking about. So that's you can still see it today. So that monument that was created nearly 800 years ago is still quite clear. It wasn't destroyed through mining, which you might think with lots of other valleys across this wonderful land of ours. I mentioned there, Bill, Eglwysilion Road, and I know you've got your map out there. We will have a look. There are a few more slides, Bill, so we're not moving on yet. So if you want to get your map out ready, and then you can try.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, see if I can see the dike on the OS map.
This is immediately south of Abertradur. This bit, Bill. Yeah.
Sorry?
This bit here is immediately south of Abertradur. And also, Bill, there you go. Senhennydd Dyke, there you can see. Abertradur.
Yep.
And there, what we've just looked at is, in fact, that little length there. You can see that it's fairly traceable. And this is something known as a cross dike. That extra dike that was created associated with this landscape. So you can get an idea of what's going on. The geography is really narrow here. So only access via the Nant i'r Aber. And actually, there's a lot more of this dike on the scale 1 to 25,000 scale map. This is the 1 to 50,000 scale map. So if you get the 1 to 25,000 scale map, I think it's in 2 sections. You can actually trace Senhennydd Dyke really, really well.
Yeah, it's called that on the map. Oh, you got it, Carl.
Yeah,
Senhennydd Dyke. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually called it. Yeah, and actually, it's quite all open. They've put wind farms and stuff up there now, but it is actually quite open. You can actually trace lots of it. But there is one there is one problem in the modern day that causes disaster to these wonderful historical dikes. They're used as the humps and bumps of the dike are actually used by motocross bike riders, and they're causing excessive damage to this type of landscape because they're ready-made dikes. So they just go up and down, back down, up and down. So this is what we're seeing. This is a scheduled protected ancient monument, like Offa's Dyke as well. So Bill, if you want to look at this map, Bill.
Yeah.
So what we've got the dike traceable there. The dike traceable there. The northern part of the dike, you've got these what's known as cross dikes here. You've got the rest of the dike coming in here, and more of it. And there is actually, if you look at the other survey maps as well, it sort of comes in like that, and you can actually trace. It's sort of, unfortunately, it's more or less traceable there. And if you think about the effect that the industrial age could have had on this. If you look a little bit further over, you've got a drift mine over here. So that if that had gone a bit further over, it would have completely destroyed the dike itself. So it's really surprising that this actually survived, because anyone that knows anything about mining, you'll know about the 1913 Senhenid colliery disaster. So it's quite again, it survived, which is great. But it's also a memory of how destructive the Norman course of history was to our land. And this isn't the only deer park that would have excluded people. There were many other deer parks across the landscape that have a similar story. But Senhenid is purely one of the most best pronounced in that. So as we and there, look at that there, we can see that there. If we go there, we can see the dike is clear. It's really traceable, and that would make a great walk, Bill.
Yeah, it covers a huge area, doesn't it? The original Norman Park, Deer Park, huge area.
12 kilometers. No. When I say 12 kilometers, it's 12 kilometers. The length, the circumference of the dike, and the area is 2,500 acres in area. This is the area enclosed. So the other thing as well is, I don't see in my notes anywhere. I think the next point is very important. Lots of these points are very important. The next point, who actually built this? The Normans built this. The Normans paid for it to be built. But you're not going to get labourers in from over the border. You're going to get local labourers in to construct this. This is quite an amazing work. This is hundreds of thousands of tons of soil being displaced to create this. And it was a complete circuit as well. So that in itself is a momentous task. And it still survives today. So naturally is momentous. Remember, the earthworks from one side to the next are around 12 meters across, with the ditch just about 5.5 to 6 meters across, and the bank itself as well. So you can get an idea of that. And it's just, all it is for deer. That's it. It's no other purpose. And also it mentions in my notes about, if I can zoom in a little bit more on this one, hang on. If I can just zoom in. If we go down there, what you can see, it mentions about field boundaries. You can see the dike there. So as we sort of move up a bit, we can see that this field boundary is actually traceable as the dike. So the dike used as a field boundary in later years. And that's obviously to do with the division and alteration of ownership of the landscape as well. Now, we're going on to another dike. We can't always stay with the same dike, and the same dike is always not available. Peter would know all about that. Anyway, so the next one we're going to look at, we got the information for the next one, but we're actually going to look at Watts Dyke, which is there. Now, it's very interesting, Watts Dyke. I've walked long stretches of Watts Dyke. You know, when what I used to do in the past, I used to get a really good 1 to 25,000 scale map, and I used to follow it, and then I used to take groups there. And interestingly enough, the boundaries, the lanes that go through Wrexham, still follow the course of the Dyke. It hasn't been built on. It's an amazing phenomenon. Why haven't they built on these dikes? It's just like holy territory, you know. Hadrian's Wall has suffered worse than this dike. Do you know what I mean? It's all it is earth and ditch. But Watts Dyke is the intriguing one out of Senhennydd, Offers, and Watts. Watts is the one that I'm really intrigued by, because it was believed that Watts Dyke was the one that was much more important in the past than actually Offers Dyke. So it gives it a bit of pedigree there. I got a nice few images about Watts Dyke. Lots of places are known as Watts Dyke Way and so on. And what I would like to do, just show you a bit of Watts Dyke. Al, there you go. It doesn't look very impressive, but it was impressive in the past, and it's been archaeologically excavated as well. None of you here with me actually went on the trip at the beginning of the year to Chirk Castle. Or was it? It was at the beginning of the year, wasn't it, Michelle? Chirk Castle. Yeah, I think we went to Chirk Castle at the beginning of the year, and they were actually archaeologically excavating Offers Dyke. But in regards to Watts Dyke, if we move on, and I'm going to use Bill's words, settle down, folks. There's a bit of noise in the background. This is what they say about Watts Dyke. Watts Dyke. The Watts Dyke was previously thought to date to the early 700s, constructed by Ethelbald, King of Mercia, who reigned from 716 to 757. Now, to describe where Mercia is, Mercia was a big territory, a big kingdom in England that butted onto Wales. It stretched all the way to the south of Liverpool. It included Shrewsbury, the area of Shropshire. It went sort of into the area of Birmingham, a bit of Manchester, that sort of area. It was a big territory, and it was one of the great kingdoms until they were united with Wessex a few years later to become the Kingdom of England, the Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of England. It goes on to say Athelbald's successor Offa built the Dyke, which carries his name at some point during his reign, 757 to 796. So it was built by Athelbald, and then you've got Offa building the successor Dyke, i.e. Offers Dyke. That's what that basically saying. However, some believe it wasn't built by Athelbald in the early 700s. It was definitely not built by Offa. Archaeological excavations in the 1990s at a place known as Claddow, Clouth means ditch. The field of the ditch near Oswestry uncovered the remains of a small fire site, together with eroded shards of Roman pottery and quantities of charcoal, which have been dated precisely between 411 and 561. And this evidence would seem to place the building of the Dyke in the era of the immediate post-Roman period, whose capital was at Wroxeter, just south of modern-day Shrewsbury. Now, it could be said, and that fire itself, the detail isn't there, but that fire itself was actually found underneath a section of Watts Dyke. Doesn't say it there, but it was actually found underneath the Dyke itself. So that meant that the fire itself predated the construction of the Dyke, but it may indicate that might be a fire associated with the people who built the Dyke in the first place. Now, this is where the word Dyke gets confusing. In some parts of the country, Dyke means bank. In other parts of the country, a Dyke means a ditch. As we found in Orkney, didn't we, Bill? The Dyke was the bank. In other places, a Dyke is a ditch. So it's got different meanings for wherever you go. But in this case, a dike has got a bank and a ditch. So there you go. So anyway, going back to this as well, to get an idea where Watts Dyke is, and it goes through Wrexham quite importantly. And that's the section that I really got to know. And this is Watts Dyke Way, 4th Clouth Watts Dyke Way, or Watts Dyke Road. However, this is where things get interesting. The dating of the fire site and hence the dike has been disputed since the 1990s. And it has been suggested that owing to the difficulties inherent in radiocarbon dating, this single date cannot be fully trusted, and also that the dike could easily have been built on top of the fire site at a later date. So, you know, that's very possible. It's now been suggested it was built not before Offa's Dyke, it could have been built after Offa's Dyke. And this is what archaeological excavation work in 2006 tell us. And in fact, and the earlier date is now thought to relate to a fire site of the sort of sub-post-Roman period earthwork which preceded the actual dike itself. It has been tentatively suggested that the likely construction date could be the 820s, way after Offa, when the Mercian king Cynulf was fighting against a resurgent Welsh threat. So what is this Welsh threat? It's actually the Kingdom of Powys. The Kingdom of Powys is a threat to Mercia, and this is what's the important thing. And I do know that some coins of Cynulf have been found over very recent times as well. He was one of those Mercian kings that issued coins. So this itself is a rather interesting map. And why is it interesting? Well, what is the most interesting thing about this plan, Bill?
Well, obviously it's been extremely well surveyed, because those numbers relate to some sort of excavation, ground excavation, or are they marked?
No, they're basically survey work and ground excavation sites. Yeah, you got that right. Yeah. But that's right.
There's two, isn't it? There's two, isn't it? Whitford Dyke has obviously been broken up and lost in the centre part.
Yes.
And Watts Dyke. So it looks like a double dike formation. Would that be defensive?
Well, basically, right, that's it. Because the ditch is on the Welsh side, in both cases, there's been, I can remember years ago, there was some really weird debate over why there are two dikes really close to each other. As you can see, that is very close. And why didn't they use the existing dike? So there's this great argument when these dikes were constructed. What came first? Hang on a minute, I just got to turn that off. What exactly came first? I don't think we should get too mixed up on what actually came first. But what I would like to say is the thing that Bill spotted. What Bill spotted was actually that you do actually have Whitford Dyke up here. Now, it was once thought that Offa's Dyke did extend all the way to the sea and may have actually connected up with Whitford Dyke, but that has been discounted. Whitford Dyke might be to do with something completely different. And if this is a I think I can remember one point. If this is a territorial thing, it might indicate that Offa's Dyke had been abandoned, and the resurgent Welsh had actually invaded parts of Mercia, captured parts of Mercia, and then the Mercians to sort of try to sort of gain control of the landscape, decided to strengthen a new frontier over here, meaning simply that the Welsh had actually conquered some English territory, or as we should call it, some Anglo-Saxon territory. But again, these dikes are great enigmas. We struggle as archaeologists to understand them. You know, the archaeological evidence makes them interesting, but I tell you what, when you I know this may sound a bit fluffy, but when you actually see the lengths of the dike, it's actually quite. It puts hairs up on the back of your neck, and I can never work out why. It's a rather interesting. It's an interesting problem. Put it that way. It's an interesting conundrum. So here we go. So did I right? We moved from that one. And you know, what I got really interested with is looking at old maps like this from the 1870s, for example, or a little bit after that. I think it's the 1880 series, actually. I'm not sure, or a little bit later. But what is interesting there is a name change. Dyke spelt with an I and Watt spelt with a single T and not two T's. And this is typical of the maps that I used to follow when I used to follow Watt's Dyke. But what usually would happen is that it was a contour issue. There was usually a high ground on the one side, and then you had a bit of a bank, and you had a natural ditch on the, or a natural fall on the one side. So it actually was a lot more impressive than what you see on the land today. I think I remember reading one source that Watt's Dyke may have been more powerfully placed in the landscape than actually Offa's Dyke. So this is another little section. I've just got to double check something a minute. Hang on a minute. Right, that's okay. This is a section of our Watt's Dyke as well. And it's quite a clear section, actually, because what you can see the bank here, and then facing into Wales, which is in the west, you can actually see that there's a little rise here, and you can actually see a ditch. So, and there's lots of old rickety trees on them as well. And again, the reason why I'm so excited about this monument at Watt's Dyke is that it's still there. It's respected, and I think there's a lot we can learn from that. And again with Sengen as well, there's a lot we can learn from that in the sense that it's not been deliberately flattened and removed. In the case of Offa's Dyke, however, when the dike actually goes across the Chirk Park estate, where you've got Chirk Castle, the Offa's Dyke there has actually been flattened, but we're talking about Watt's Dyke. It's quite an interesting site. It really is. And it's well worth a visit. But I don't think we could take an Archaeology Cymru trip up there to look at a dike. But again, look at this. You've got some really nice oldie worldy trees. You look down there, ditch. You got the bank. Again, this looks really impressive. Really, really impressive. A lot more impressive than St. Gened Dyke. Remember, St. Gened Dyke is just to keep the deer in, but that's not to dismiss that dike's importance. Again, moving on. I'm quite ignorant tonight. Have any of you actually seen Watt's Dyke? Have any of you actually been there?
No, I haven't. No.
No. Without sort of thinking, you wouldn't know it was there. You know, when we mentioned about St. Gened Dyke earlier on, we mentioned about the fact that modern day boundaries actually follow lengths of it. Well, this is similar here. You can when you get the maps, you get the maps and you think, wow, you know, there's a nice bit of dike here, but all it is just followed by a bit of a hedge, and actually the dike itself is actually there. You can actually see a bit of the ditch on that side. So that modern day hedge is sort of alongside it, and it sort of respects it in a way. It's very, very strange. I think this type of subject, which is something unusual, connects you with different things that are not really rightly understood. Now, this really shows what the dike is about. And there was an archaeologist that I used to be in touch with a lot in the past. She was called Margaret Worthington. And she used to, actually, that's all she did was to work on the Offas and Watt's Dyke. She was obsessed by them. And this is rather interesting. So what you can see now, an archaeological cross-section, you can see the modern surface here. And this is in the type of, you know, the image that we've just seen. It's sort of looking at that type of landscape where most of the bank has actually gone and most of the ditch has been gone. But you can actually get an idea of the height there. So you're talking about average original height of the ditch would be about 2 meters, and the average height of the bank being 2 meters, and maybe a palisade along it. So if it's a very, you know, low lying palisade and it's quite squat, then you've got a 5 meter high defense before the people from this side, which are the Cymraeg, can actually get to the other side. And again, give you an idea of dimensions, the maximum width being 8 meters across, which is quite amazing, really. And then what we have then, the bank, look at that figure there, the bank being a maximum of 12 meters across. So that means, wait for it, that if you add the figure 8 and 12 together, that's a 20 meter wide defensive earthwork running across that part of the landscape, 20 meters wide. That has to be said to be impressive. We said that the St. Kenny was about 10 to 12. This is about 20 meters wide. So this is really, and it can really be very much traced across the landscape today. And I love it when I do these cross sections because it really helps you understand what you understand to be what you're looking at. And what they've done is that throughout Wrexham, the Wrexham area, what they've got, what you can see there is, this is the back of the houses in Wrexham, and you can see the trackway is behind the bank, and that's sort of the natural fall of the ditch. And again, even today, well, if you look at the steps there, that look rather impressive. You would be stood down here looking up. And obviously this is greatly eroded away today. And there you go. Do you know what? It's you've got the older River Trains Wales on the left there, and you've got the back of the housing estate, and you've got the Dyke in front of you. It's actually used as a modern boundary. I can't get over this, as you can probably work out. That it's so well preserved. If you compare this with, say, the remains of a Roman, the Roman city of Kenchester, which is near Hereford, it's just basically a field that none of the boundaries are really there anymore. It's all over the place. And that's a Roman city with a wall around it. This is just an earthen bank, but this is really well preserved. It's a great feat of engineering. And there you go. It basically forms, you can go a walk down the back lanes of Wrexham itself. And at one point you could basically run over to Offers Dyke. It's that close. It is that close. It's, I think, a few hundred yards at one point, that the two dikes are so close to each other. And again, more of this type of landscape, utilizing it, seeing it in a landscape. Again, what's Dyke, this is where it looks impressive. I've actually been at this location. It looks very, very impressive here. It really does. And again, that's looking into Wales. It's difficult to get the orientation here. You've got these old trees, ditch, and looking into Wales on the western side. So what I'd like to do now is actually look at the more familiar one of all these. So if I said we were going to do St. Kenneth, we were going to do Watts Dyke and Offers Dyke, you'd all say that you know about Offers Dyke. And it's quite likely that most of you have seen Offers Dyke and you understand Offers Dyke. But again, this image is quite enigmatic. Look at that. It's again, it's a perfect respected monument within the landscape. You can see that there, you can follow that there. It's almost as if that was created by bulldozers a few decades ago. And you can see the bank on the Mercian side and the bank on the Powys or the Brycheiniog side, the kingdom of the various kingdoms of Cymru. I've got to be very careful to say that I've got to be very careful with the words with Offers Dyke. Whereas most of Watts Dyke is in Cymru and in the north in sort of our land, lots of Offers Dyke moves between England, Wales, and that type of thing. So when you say actually there is modern day England and there's modern day Wales. This whole stretch could actually be in modern day England or Wales. But again, this is really, really well preserved. And the first experience I had of Offa's Dyke was when I was dressed up as a soldier, and I had my Brown Bess musket, and then somebody said, "You're actually walking on Offa's Dyke," and I got really excited. And this is actually how deep the ditch is at places with Offa's Dyke itself. So you've got this beautiful beech tree on one side of the ditch, and you've got the bank on the right-hand side there. And when you're looking at this, you can get an idea how impressive these defenses are. Very, very impressive. And you've already realized that some of the slides have actually shown you have been inverted. Hence why I've had to say the west that side and so on. But anyway, this is these stretches. You do get really well preserved stretches all the way from Chepstow, Nine Turn, all the way up through to Wrexham and so on and so on. But the best bits of Offa's Dyke are actually in the middle. If you're looking for Offa's Dyke by Chepstow, at times you could be cruelly disappointed, because part of the length of Offa's Dyke actually follows alongside the River Wye itself. So the actual, the actual boundary is actually the River Wye, but that makes up the lengthway of Offa's Dyke itself. I've taken this image because in 2014 there was a trial case in court. It concerned a Cadw versus a local farmer, and the local farmer said, "I accidentally pushed my bulldozer through the dike, not knowing it was a dike." And he actually got away with it because it's Cadw's responsibility to tell landowners that they've got an ancient monument on their land. It turned out that this farmer, or whoever he was, hadn't been informed by Cadw that this was Offa's Dyke, not this stretch, but a stretch near here, near Chirk, actually, up in the north. And he actually got away with destroying part of Offa's Dyke because there was no proof that it knew it was Offa's Dyke. So in other words, our laws to protect archaeological sites in this country are absolutely pointless. If you can say that you didn't know it, people have got away with demolishing whole castles by saying, "Oh, I didn't know it was a castle," and they can actually get away with it. Unless somebody tells you it's a castle, you can get away with not knowing it's a castle. That's in law. That's what happens. But anyway, moving again. This is the wrong way round again. But what we've got the dike itself, the bank on the Mercian side, and obviously here you've got the slight outer scarp, and you've got the ditch itself. Very, very impressive images. And again, you can walk vast tracks of this. Now, Bill, have you walked Offa's Dyke?
No, but my rambling group have walked a quarter of it. That's all I can offer.
Is that the lower section?
Yeah, the lower section. Hay up to
Knighton.
Newtown area, Hay that sort of section.
Yeah. There's usually, it's usually done in quarters. There's 4 quarters of it. So there you go. That's the first quarter, second quarter, a third quarter, fourth quarter. This is actually showing it actually going it's actually showing it not going the Whitford Dyke length. So whether Whitford Dyke actually joined with Offa's Dyke or Offa's Dyke is something completely separate is another thing altogether. Now, what must be said about Offa's Dyke is that it wasn't all built, or it wasn't built at all in the reign of King Offa, because Offa didn't actually control the whole length of the border between Cymru and the princes of Cymru, and actually that side. And you can actually see that Offa's Dyke actually goes to Oswestry, which is in England today, and goes over to Kington, and then back into Wales at Knighton, and then back in, and it just goes back and forth. So it's all over the place. So, you know, it's not akin to showing the boundary of our land as it is today. And again, this is an extension from the previous image. Again, inverted. The English side is on the left, and the Welsh side is on the right. And that's a modern map. There we go. It goes all the way. And what you can see with the geography, you can see the Clwydian range. So it's in an upland area, all the way through to Oswestry, Welsh Pool, more upland areas, all the way back through the Black Mountains as well, on the boundary of the Black Mountains, and all the way down following the boundary of the River Wye. Oh, thank God we've actually got one the right way, for God's sake. So you can actually get an idea of the width of this wonderful Offa's Dyke. Do you know what? I'm going to see it. There should actually be some notes here, which there it is. So here we go. The general accepted theory about much of the earthwork attributes its construction to Offa, king of Mercia, between 757 to 796. It had a ditch on the Welsh side, the western side. The structure did not represent a mutually agreed boundary. Basically, the Mercians just dug it. It had a ditch on the western side with the displaced soil piled into a bank on the Mercian side. This suggests that Mercians constructed it as a defensive earthwork or to demonstrate the power and intent of their kingdom. Do you know what? Nobody's asked me that question. What was it? I wouldn't say it was defensive at all, because if you defended the whole length of this kingdom of Mercia and the other kingdoms around it, you would need an army of tens of thousands of troops to man the whole thing. And back then, they didn't have armies of tens of thousands. It was probably a display of power. They probably put a palisade on the top along the length, and that was it. Throughout its entire length, the Dyke provides an uninterrupted view from Mercia into Wales. It's to look into Wales, the nosy buggers. Where the earthwork encounters hills or high ground, it passes to the west of them. Although historians often overlook Offa's reign due to limitations in source material, he ranks as one of the greatest Anglo-Saxon rulers, as evidenced in his ability to raise the workforce and resources required to construct Offa's Dyke. If he built all of it, even if he built sections of it, that's quite a big feat. The construction of the earthwork probably involved a corvée system requiring sub-kings to build certain lengths of the earthworks for Offa, in addition to the normal services that provided to their king. The tribal hiddage, a primary document, shows the distribution of land within Britain in the 700s. It shows that people were located within specified territories for administration. But even then, you couldn't man it. Because if you man it, even if you're doing that in service to the Lord wouldn't have people to work on this landscape either, let alone the king. So it was probably more to show off than anything else. That's what I would go with, and that's what I've always said. So again, that deep ditch, the bank on the inside, there it is, Powys, Mercia. And I can't see it being, you know, something that you could actively defend all year round. It wouldn't be possible.
Just demarcation, surely.
Demarcation, yes, definitely. Demarcation. Actually, when I was looking at the research for this, I accidentally slipped this one in here. Did you know this is one of the original one of the original doors for Chepstow Castle?
Yeah. Yes, I saw it last year when I was in there. Very impressive.
It's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very.
But this is nothing to do with the lecture, but it's at Chepstow where Offa's Dyke starts in the south. And again, this is a length of Offa's Dyke at Chepstow. And you can see how deep it is again. And if you can get an idea, there's no point putting a dike on this side if you've got this. I think there would have been a bank, but there obviously would have been needed a ditch because the River Wye formed the ditch itself.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do, we're practically at the end actually, but I wanted to mention one last thing. What I've demonstrated is these dikes are sacred. They seem to be well-respected monuments. And that's been shown by the survival of these wonderful earthworks. But up in the Mardy Valley, in the lower Ferndale Valley, so you've got south of here, you've got Pontypridd, and then you've got Ferndale, and then you've got Mardy. And up here, a bend in the road is, is actually, you can't see it, but there is actually a ditch. You could just about see it there. There's a bank and a ditch running across here. And this is referred to as Cross Dyke. This is a cross dyke. Unfortunately, when this dyke was actually excavated by the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust about 5 or 6 years ago, they didn't actually find any evidence to date it. And unfortunately, lots of these monuments don't actually have the protection to actually try and understand them in the future. And this one's been completely destroyed. It no longer exists because all those little ruts there have actually been created by mountain cross bikes, and they have completely destroyed this monument. And the Glamorgan and Gwent Archaeological Trust excavated it because we couldn't save it. We couldn't protect it. So they excavated to try and find some information. They couldn't actually get any data and evidence. So there's lots of these banks and ditches across the landscape that we don't actually understand what they were, but maybe in future years we may. So what I'd like to ask, are there any questions?
You've just answered my question. My question was, if these are boundary markers, there should be many such examples, on a smaller scale perhaps, in other parts of the country.
And there
There
are,
probably
yes.
are. There probably are, but many have been eroded away, possibly. Yeah.
There are quite a lot. Exactly.
It seemed to be the fashion at the time to actually mark territory boundaries with ditches, and that's the obvious thing to do. You think about it.
Well, exactly, and that's all you did to sort of indicate what was what. So what I'm going to do is Pam, unmute. Anything you'd like to say, Pete?
No, not particularly. It was good. I enjoyed that. I'm going to have to pop up to St. Kenneth and have a mosey around there, see if I can see that.
But Pete, don't go out there without taking a map with you, okay? You won't find it otherwise.
Yeah.
It's so obvious, but you'll miss it. You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah, well, I got this map here, but it just doesn't quite go to Caerphilly.
What you want, Pete, is 166.
All right, that's 170. Yeah.
166.
You want the 166, 1 to 25,000 scale, Pete.
This says Porthcawl and Rhondda.
That's you got
That's
right.
one, yeah.
Peter, you got the 1 to 50,000, and you've Bill's. So you've got to get the orange maps. You got the pink ones.
Yeah.
You've got to get Explorer maps.
On the extreme west is my stake, and the extreme east of the map area is Caerphilly. So it covers the whole landscape between.
Mine gets as far as Pontypridd, but doesn't get as far as Caerphilly.
No. You will. I actually showed you the 1 to 50,000 scale map, so it is on the northern. But if you want really real detail to find it, it's a nice little walk. You can park really close, Pete. It gives you a great view of St. Kenneth, and it's nice. It's a nice piece of archaeology. And you know what? I can't work out why some of the images that we were looking at were inverted. I don't know why that was.
Well, it just depends which way you're looking. If you're looking south, then that's how they would be. If you just say, "Oh, we're looking south," then you realise that Wales was on the right and England on the left.
Yeah.
If you're looking north, it'd be the other way around.
It's just the
Impeccable logic, Peter. Impeccable.
impeccable logic. Thank you, Pete. You've well answered that one. Right. Is there anything you'd like to say, Pamas?
Yeah, here it comes. I could see a program, and I think it was the Roman soldiers used to use the bank and ditches to hide themselves, and something to do with Welsh gold. So they were taking Welsh gold and hiding themselves and using the bank and ditches. No, nothing to do
No,
with
no,
this.
just whatever you watch, right? Just ignore that one. We know that the Romans wouldn't hide from anybody, and nor would a Cornishman hide his. Well, a Cornishman would hide his tin, but I don't think they would hide it in that way. Just whatever that was, you need to watch her again. Probably work.
The Roman road stopped at Exeter.
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
And they might have crossed the Dyke in carting all that gold from the Dollar mines. Back
Exactly.
into England, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And Pat, you have the last say tonight.
Oh, right. Well, you really made it come to life. I never get very interested or excited about, dikes.
Oh.
So,
You're an archaeologist, Pat.
But now you have got excited. So now you have got excited. Can you?
Thank you.
Now you have got excited. I wanted to mention something. Can you all bear with me just a second? I'm just going to get a drink. Oh, I'm going to get a drink. Bear with me a second, and I'll be back now.
This is a Gren's cartoon.
Tell them all about it, Pete.
Oh, yeah, Gren, yeah.
Yeah, it's Offa's Dyke. It says there, that's Offa's Dyke. And it says on it, lovely view, isn't it? Considering it's England.
Yeah.
Looking across.
That's Gren for you. That's Gren. Yeah.
That's Gren. Yeah.
Fantastic, isn't it? He died about a year ago. Yeah, Gren.
Show us the picture again. Let's see it. And say something so I can make it big.
Well, yeah, that's Offa's Dyke.
Offa's Dyke, yeah.
It says Offa's Dyke. And then they say, the lovely view, isn't it? Considering it's England.
I like it. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I thought I had to show you that one.
Yeah. There is nothing to do with Wales, but there is a dike at Burwell, which is East Anglia, and they have found skeletal remains and some finds as well. My son lives in Burwell, so that's the only reason I know a little bit about that one.
So, did you get that Gren thing from a skip outside in Cardiff? Because actually, there was one point. What happened? There was so much artwork, they chucked a lot of it in a skip.
No, this was given to me by one of the kids. Can you see it?
Yeah. Is that an original?
Offa's Dyke.
Yeah, love it.
Lovely view, considering it's England.
And Carl, you didn't mention the Dick Van.
Say that again?
You didn't mention the Dick Van.
Where is that?
Dick Van Dyke?
Oh,
Well done, Bill. That was
You didn't mention it,
that was a good one.
You're not known for humour, Bill, but that really hits me.
Yeah.
You should have kept that on a minibus. We'll have to. Right, can I just mention one last thing? Can I mention one last thing, folks? I wanted. We could have ended it about a couple of minutes ago, but Pat just mentioned about, she got interested in the dikes, and then somebody mentioned that, Pat, you're an archaeologist, and the interesting thing is that on starting next Thursday. Well, I don't know if I can run it out this quick, but it might be next Thursday or the following Thursday. We'll be doing. We'll be moving the ghost evening from a Saturday to a Thursday, but instead of being a ghost evening on a Thursday evening, we'll actually be looking at archaeological techniques like aerial photography, geophysics, dendrochronology. We'll be doing 8 of them, and that's what. So if you want to learn about these techniques, aerial photography and stuff, we'll be doing that. Hopefully, as of next week or the following week.
You weren't impressed with my ghost story about Port Leven, were you?
I didn't hear it.
Didn't you?
No.
I told you about the fisherman coming in on the early morning tide.
No.
And walking up the road and sees his neighbour at their garden gate. Said, "Hello, Mrs. Pascoe, nice to see you about again." And then he goes home, goes in and sits down. His wife then's up, gives him some breakfast. And he said, "Oh, lovely to see Mrs. Pascoe up and about again." "Oh, you didn't see her," they said, "because she died when you left. We buried her last Thursday."
Ghost story, yeah.
No, that is a good one. I could make something of that. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. Thanks for that, Pete.
All right.
And thanks for the Dick Van Dyke thing, Bill.
That's okay. You can use that in your next lecture, okay? No charge.
Yeah, no charge. Right, anyway, any questions before we finish tonight?
No, good. Enjoyed that.
Thank you.
No, tomorrow 2:30. Yeah.
Tomorrow at 2:30, and it would be great for some of you guys to be meeting in a hall, but it's not going to happen because we don't have that option yet. But as soon as you do, Kathy will be joining you.
Good, excellent.
Aren't you lucky?
Look forward to it.
She's upset that what it is in Lantwick Major. She meets with 3 other people, right? And they're not the, put it this way, they're not the calmest of people, and they're always laughing. And when I'm giving the lecture, they're always talking, and she's getting really upset. And what she said about the Bridgend crowd, they're nice and quiet there.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so she loves you guys. She wants to move.
Good.
So
Who's
okay
the
then.
Scotch chap down in Bridgend, Phil?
Sorry, Pete.
Who was the Scotch fella down in
George,
Bridgend?
we haven't heard about George at all. Pat, have you heard anything about George?
I have months ago.
Yeah.
He continued his membership, but he said to me he will only come back if we start doing it back in the hall. We won't be doing it back in the hall, it looks like we won't be seeing him again.
Oh,
So,
never seen that.
I like
Never. Yeah. Okay.
But unfortunately, my hands are tied. There's nothing.
And Dot's cake. Of course, we missed you. I expect you missed Dot's cake.
What Dot's? What? Hang on a minute. You've right. Welsh cakes, biscuits, ginger. Yeah, the ginger nuts, the full works. Yeah.
At least we don't put weight on that. We used to in the Bridgend classes.
Well, yeah.
I always said archaeology can be fattening.
Well, it is for that group. Exactly. So, okay. On that note, I'm gonna call it a night, and I will see you. I will see Pat, Bill tomorrow, and Pam in the morning, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Anyway, thanks if there's no more questions, Pete, Bill, Pam, and Pat, I will see you all soon. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Okay. Good night. Good night, everybody.
Night. And Pam, I thought I would say the Lantwick Major class, as of tomorrow, won't be called the Lantwick Major class because it won't be a Lantwick Major class. So there you go. You're just joining the class that you've been in from day one.
I am totally confused.
No, what we're saying because the morning class that you join is the Lantwick Major class, or was. But seeing as we won't be meeting in Lantwick Major anymore, it's simply the class that you take part in.
Right, okay then. Unless you wanted to make the 2 groups into 1 group.
We have
a morning and an afternoon, but combined.
The problem there is one slight problem with that. Hang on, I'm going to turn I'm going to turn this off.